Hello friends, my name is Dixita, and today I give some information from the psychology of money books. In this chapter is freedom. The United States is the richest nation in the history of the world, but there is a little evidence that its citizens are on average happier today than they were in the 1950s, when wealth and income were much lower. Even at the median level and adjusted for inflation. A 2019 Gallup poll of 150,000 people in 140 countries found that about 45% of Americans said they felt a lot of worry the previous day. The global average was 39%, 55% of Americans said they felt a lot of stress the previous day. For the rest of the world 35% said the same. Part of what's happened here is that we have used our greater wealth to buy bigger and better stuff, but we have simultaneously given up more control over our time. At best, those things cancel each other out. Median family income adjusted for inflation was $29,000 in 1955 28 raised to 28. In 2019, it was just over $62,000. We have used that wealth to live a life hardly conceivable to the 1950s. Americans given for a median family. The median American's home increased from 1983 square feet in 1950 to 436 square feet in 2018. The average new American's home now has more bathrooms than occupants. Our cars are faster and more efficient. Our TVs are cheaper and sharper. What's happened to our time, on the other hand, barely looks like progress, and a lot of the reason has to do with the kind of jobs more of us now have. John D. Rockefeller was one of the most successful businessmen of all time. He was also a recluse, spending most of his time by himself. He really spoke deliberately, making himself inaccessible and staying quiet when you cough caught his attention. A refinery worker who occasionally had Rockefeller ear once remarked, "He lets everybody else talk, while he sits back and says nothing." When asked about his silence during meeting, Rockefeller often recited a poem. A wise old owl lived in an oak. The more he saw, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why aren't we all like that wise old bird? Rockefeller was a strange guy, but he figured out something that now applies to tens of millions of workers. Rockefeller's job wasn't to drill wells, load trains, or move barrels. It was to think and make good decisions. Rockefeller's product, his deliverable, wasn't what he did with his hands or even his words. It was what he figured out inside his head. So that's where he spent most of his time and energy, despite sitting quietly most of the day in what might have looked like free time or leisure hours to most people. He was constantly working in his mind, thinking problems thought. This was unique in his day. Almost all jobs during Rockefeller's time required doing things with your hands. In 1817, 46% of jobs were in agricultural and 35% were in crafts or manufacturing. According to economist Robert Gordon, few professions relied on a worker's brain. You didn't think. You labored without interpretation and your work was visible and tangible. Today's stats flip. 38% of jobs are new, now designed as managers, official and professionals. These are decision-making jobs, another 41%, and are service jobs that often rely on your thoughts as much as your actions. More of us have jobs that look closer to Rockefeller than a typical 1950s manufacturing worker, which means our days don't end when we clock out and leave the factory. We are constantly working in our heads, which means it feels like work never ends. If your job is to build cars, there is little you can do when you're you are not on the assembly line. You detach from work and leave your tools in the factory. But if your job is to create a marketing company, a thought-based and decision job, your tool is your head, which never leaves you. You might be thinking about your project during your compute as you are making dinner while you put your kids to sleep, and when you wake up stressed as 3 in the morning, you might be on the clock for fewer hours than you would in 1950, but it feels like you are working 24 by 7. Dear Thompson of the alternate ones describe it like this: if the operating equipment of the 21st century is a portable device, this means the modern factory is not a place at all. It is the day itself. The computer age has liberated the tools of productivity from the office. Most knowledge workers whose laptops and smartphones are portable all-purpose media making machines can theoretically be as productive at 2 p.m. in the main office as at 2 a.m. in a Tokyo. We work all at midnight on the couch. Compared to generations prior, control over your time has diminished. And since controlling your time is such a key happiness influencer, we shouldn't be surprised that people don't feel much happier even though we are on average richer than ever. What do we do about that? It's not an easy problem to solve because everyone's different. The first step is merely acknowledging what does and does not make almost everyone happy. In his book 30 Lessons for Living, gerontologist Carl Piller interviewed 1,000 elderly Americans looking for the most important lesson they learned from decades of life experience abroad. No one, not a single person out of 1,000, said that to be happy you should try to work as hard as you can to make money to buy the things you want. No one, not a single person, said it's important to be at least as wealthy as the people around you. And if you have more than they do, it's real success. No one, not a single person, said you should choose your work based on your desired future earning power. What they did value were the things like quality friendships, being parts of something bigger than themselves, and spending qualities unstructured time with their children. Your kids don't want your money anywhere near as much as they want you, especially they want you with them. Pilmer writes, take it from those who have lived through everything. Controlling your time is the highest dividend money pays. Now a short chapter on the one of the lowest dividends money pays. Today's next chapter is 8. 8th chapter is Man in the Car Paradox. In this passage, no one is impressed with your possessions as much as you are. The best part of being a valet is getting to drive some of the coolest cars to ever touch pavement. Guests came in driving Ferris, Lamborghinis, Rolls-Royce, roses the whole aristocratical fleet. It was my dream to have one of these cars of my own because they sent such a strong signal to others that you made it. You are smart, you are rich, you have taste, you are important. Look at me. The irony is that I really, if ever looked at them, the drivers. When you see someone driving a nice car, you really think, wow, the guy driving that car is cool. Instead, you think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I am cool. Subconscious or not, this is how people think. There is a paradox here. People tend to want wealth to signal to others that they should be liked and admired, but in reality, those other people often bypass admiring you, not because they don't think wealth is admirable, but because they use your wealth as a benchmarker for their own desire to be liked and admired. The letter I wrote after my son was born said, you might think you want an expensive car, a fancy watch, and a huge house, but I am telling you, you don't. What you want is respect and admiration from other people, and you think having expensive stuff will bring it. It almost never does, especially from the people you want to respect and admire you. I learned that as a valet when I began thinking about all the thinking about all the people driving up to the hotel in their ferries, watching me go. People must walk everywhere they went, and I am sure they loved it. I am sure they felt admired. But did they know I did not care about them or even notice them? Did they know I was only going at the car and imagining myself in the driver's seat? Did they buy a ferries thinking it would bring them admiration without realizing that I am likely most others who were impressed with the car didn't actually give them, the driver, a moment's thought? Does this same idea apply to those living in big homes? Almost certainly. Jewelry and clothes, yeah. My point here is not to abandon the pursuit of wealth or even fancy car. I like both. It's stubble recognition that people generally aspire to be respected and admired by others, and using money to buy fancy things may bring less of it than you imagine. If respect and admiration are your goal, be careful how you seek it. Humility, kindness, and empathy will bring you more respect than or power ever will. We are not done talking about fairies. Another story about the paradox of fast cars in the next chapter. Today's next chapter is ninth. Ninth is wealth is what you don't see. This quote is spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. Money has many ironies. Here's an important one. Wealth is what you don't see. My time as a valet was in the mid 2000s in Los Angeles when materials appearance took precedence over everything but oxygen. If you see a ferry driving around, you might intuitively assume the owner of the car is rich, even if you are not paying much attention to them. But as I got to know some of these people, I realized that wasn't always the case. Many were middle decor success who spent a huge percentage of their paycheck on a car. I remember a fellow Will called Roger. He was about my age. I had no idea what Roger did, but he drove a Porsche which was enough for people to draw assumption. Then one day Roger arrived in an old Honda. Same the next week and the next. What happened to your process? I asked. It was reposed after defaulting on his car loan. He said there was not a martial option. He responded like he was telling the next play in the game. Every assumption you might have had about him was wrong. Los Angeles is full of Rogers. Someone driving a $1 lakh car might be wealthy, but the only data point you have about their wealth is that they have $1 lakh less than they did before they bought the car. That's all you know about them. We tend to judge wealth by what we see because that's the information we have in front of us. We can't see people's bank. We can't see people's bank account or brokerage statements. So we rely on outward appearance to gauge financial success. Cars, homes, Instagrams, photos. Modern capitalism makes helping people fake it until they make it a crash industry. But the truth is what? Wealth is what you don't see. Wealth is the nice cars not purchased, the diamonds not bought, the watches not worn, the clothes forgone, the first class upgrade decline. Wealth is financial assets that haven't yet been converted into the stuff you see. That's not how we think about wealth because you can't contextualize what you can't see. Singer Rihanna nearly went bankrupt after overspending and sued her financial advisor. The advisor responded, what was it really necessary to tell her that if you spend money on things, you will end up with the things and not the money? You can laugh and please do, but the answer is yes. People do need to be told that. When most people say they want to be a millionaire, what they might actually mean is I did like to spend $1 million, and that is literally the opposite of being a millionaire. Investor Bill Mann once wrote, there is no faster way to feel rich than to spend lots of money on really nice things. But the way to be rich is to spend money you have and to not spend money you don't have. It's really that simple. It is excellent advice, but it may not go far enough. The only way to be wealthy is to not spend the money that you do have. It's not just the only way to accumulate wealth. It's the very definition of wealth. We should be careful to define the difference between wealthy and rich. It is more than semantics. Not knowing the difference is the source of countless poor money decisions. Rich is the current income. Someone driving a $1 lakh car is almost certainly rich because even if they purchase the car with debt, you need a certain level of income to afford the monthly payment. Same with those who live in big homes. It's not hard to spot rich people. They often go out of their way to make themselves known. But wealth is hidden. It's income not spent. Wealth is an option not yet taken to buy something later. Its value lies in offering you option, flexibility and growth to one day purchase more stuff than you could right now. Diet and exercise offer a useful analogy. Losing weight is notoriously hard even among those putting in the work of vigorous exercise. In his book, The Body, Bill Byron explained why. One study in America found that people overestimate the number of calories they burn in a workout by a factor of 4. They also then consume on average about twice as many calories as they had just burned off. The fact is, you can quite quickly undo a lot of exercise by eating a lot of food, and most of us do. Exercise is like being rich. You think, I did the work and I now deserve to treat myself to a big meal. Wealth is turning down that treadmill and actually burning net calories. It's hard and requires self-control, but it creates a gap between what you could do and what you choose to do. That across to you over time. The problem for many of us is that it is easy to find rich role models. It's harder to find wealthy ones because by definition their success is more hidden. There are course there are of course wealthy people who also spend a lot of money on stuff. But even in those cases what we see is their richness, not their wealth. We see the cars they choose to buy and perhaps the schools they choose to spend their kids to. We don't see the saving, retirement accounts or investment portfolios. We see the homes they bought, not the homes they we see the homes they bought, not the homes they could have bought had they stretched themselves thin. The danger here is that I think most people deep down want to be wealthy. They want freedom and flexibility, which is what financial asset not yet spent can give you, but it is so ingredient in us that to have money is to spend money that we don't get to see the restraint it takes to actually be healthy. And since we can't see it, it's hard to learn about it. People are good at learning by imitations, but the hidden nature of wealth makes it hard to imitate others and learn from their ways. After he died, Ronald Reid became many people's financial role model. He was lionized in the media and cherished on social media, but he was nobody financial role model while he was living because every penny of his wealth was hidden, even to those who knew him. Imagine how hard it would be to learn how to write if you couldn't read the works of great authors. Who would be your inspiration? Who would you admire? Whose news, tricks, and tips would you follow? If it would make something that is already hard even harder, it's difficult to learn from what you can't see, which helps explain why it's so hard for many to build wealth. The world's filled with people who look modest but are actually wealthy, and people who look rich who live at the razor edge of insolvency. Keep this in mind when quickly judging others' success and setting your own goals. If wealth is what you don't spend, what good is it? Well, let me convince you to save money. Today's next chapter is 10th chapter. 10th chapter is save money. This quota is the only factor you can control generates on one of the only things that matters. How wonderful! Let me convince you to save money. It won't take long, but it's an old task, isn't it? Do people need to be convinced to save money? My observation is that yes, many do. Past a certain level of income, people fall into three groups: those who save, those who don't think they can save, and those who don't think they need to save. This is for the latter two. The first idea, simple but easy to overlook, is that Building wealth has little to do with your income or investment returns and lots of to do with your savings rate. Quick story about the power of efficiency. In the 1970s, the world looked like it was running out of oil. The calculation wasn't hard. The global economy used a lot of oil. The global economy was growing, and the amount of oil we would drill couldn't keep up. We didn't run out of oil, thank goodness. But that wasn't just because we found more oil or even got better at taking it out of the ground. The biggest reason we overcome the oil crisis is because we started building cars, factories, and homes that are more energy efficient than they used to be. The United States uses 60% less energy per dollar of GDP today than it did in 1950s raised to 32. The average miles per gallon of all vehicles on the road has doubled since 1975. A 1989 Ford Taurus averages 80.0 mpg. A 2019 KV Suburban averages 18.1 mpg. The world grew its energy wealth not by increasing the energy it had, but by decreasing the energy it needed. US oil and gas production has increased 65% since 1975, while conservation and efficiency has more than doubled what we can do with that energy. So it's easy to see which has mattered more. The important thing here is that finding more energy is largely out of our control and surrounded in uncertainty because it relies on a slippery mix of having the right geology, geography, weather, and geopolitics. But becoming more efficient with the energy we use it is largely in our controls. The decision to buy a lighter car or ride a bike is up to you and has the 100% chance of improving efficiency. The same is true with our money. Investment returns can make you rich, but whether an investing strategy will work and how long it will work for and whether market will cooperate is always in doubt. Results are surrounded in uncertainty. Personal savings and frugality finances conversation is conservation and efficiency are parts of the money equation that are more in your control and have a 100% chance of being as effective in the future as they are today. If you view building wealth as something that will require more money or big investment returns, you may become as pessimistic as the energy domains were in the 1970s. The path forward looks harder out of your control. If you view it is powered by your own figure, frugality and efficiency, the destiny is clearer. Wealth is just the accumulated leftovers after you spend what you take in. And since you can build wealth without a high income, but have no chance of building wealth without a high saving rate, it's clear which one matter more. More importantly, the value of wealth is relative to what you need. Say you and I have the same net worth, and say you are better investor than me. I can earn 8% annual returns and you can earn 12% annual returns. But I am more efficient with my money. Let's say I need half as much money to be happy while your lifestyle compounds as fast as your assets. I am better off than you are despite being a worst investor. I am getting more benefit from my investment despite lower returns. The same is true for incomes. Learning to be happy with less money creates a gap between what you have and what you want, similar to the gap you get from growing your paycheck, but easier and more in your control. A high savings rate means having lower expense than you otherwise could, and having lower expenses means your savings go further than they would if you spent more. Think about this in the context of how much time and effort goes into achieving 0.1% of annual investment outperformance, millions of hours of research, tens of billions of dollars of effort from professionals, and it's easy to see what's potential more important or worth chasing. There are professional investors who grind 80 hours a week to add a tenth of a percentage point to their returns, when there are 2 or 3 full percentage points of lifestyle bloat in their finances that can be exploited with less efforts. Big investment returns and fat paychecks are amazing when they can be achieved, and some can achieve them, but the fact that there's so much effort put into one side of the finance equation and so little put into the other is an opportunity for most people past a certain level of income. What you need is just what side sits below your ego. Everyone needs the basics. Once they are covered, there's another level of comfortable basics, and past that there's basics that are both comfortable, entertaining, and elegantly, but spending beyond a pretty low level of materialism is mostly a reflection of ego approaching income, a way to spend money to show people that you have money. Think of it like this, and one of the most powerful ways to increase your savings isn't to raise your income, it's to raise your humility. When you define savings as the gap between your ego and your income, you realize why many people with decent income have saved so little. It's daily struggle against instincts to extend your peacock feathers to the outermost limits and keeps up with others doing the same. People with enduring personal finances success, not necessarily those with high incomes, tend to have a propensity to not give a damn what others think about them. So people's ability to save is more in their control than they might think. Savings can be created by spending less. You can spend less if you desire less, and you will desire less if you care less about what others think of you. Yes, I argue often in this book, money relies more on psychology than finance, and you don't need a specific reason to save. Some people save money for a down payment on a house or a new car or for retirement. That's great, of course, but saving does not require a goal of purchasing something specific. You can save just for saving's sake, and indeed you should. Everyone should. Only saving for a specific goal makes sense in a predictable world, but ours isn't. Saving is a hedge against life's inevitable ability to surprise the hell out of you the worst possible moment. Another benefit in chapter 7, gaining control over your time. Everyone knows the tangible stuff money buys. The intangible stuff is harder to wrap your head around, so it tends to go unnoticed, but the intangible benefits of money can be far more valuable and capable of increasing your happiness than the tangible things that are obvious targets of our savings. Savings without a spending goals gives you options and flexibility, the ability to wait and the opportunity to pronounce. It gives you time to think. It lets you change course on your own terms. Every bit of savings is like taking a point in the future that would have been owned by someone else and giving it back to yourself. That flexibility and control over your time is an unseen return on wealth. What is the return on cash in the bank? That gives you the option of changing careers or retiring early or freedom from worry. I did say it is calculable. It's incalculable in two ways. It's so large and important that we can't put a price on it. But it's also literally incalculable. We can't measure it like we can measure interest rates. And what we can't measure, we tend to overlook. When you don't have control over your time, you're forced to accept whatever way luck is thrown your way. But if you have flexibility, you have the time to wait for no-brainer opportunities to fall in your lap. This is a hidden return on your saving. Saving in the bank that earn 0% interest might actually generate an extraordinary return if they give you the flexibility to take a job with a lower salary but more purpose or wait for investment. Opportunities that come when those without flexibility turn desperate. And that hidden returns is becoming more important. The world used to be hyper local just over 100 years ago. 75% of Americans had neither telephones nor regular mail services, according to historian Robert Gordon. That made competition hyper-local. A worker with just average intelligence might be the best in their town, and they got treated like the best because they didn't have to compete with the smarter worker in another town. That's now changed. A hyper-connected world means the talent pool you compete in has gone from hundreds or thousands spending your own to millions or billions spending the globe. This is especially true for jobs that rely on working with your head, virtue, your muscles, teaching, marketing, analysis, consulting, accounting, programming, journalism, and even medicine increasingly compete in global talent pools. More fields will fall into this category as digitization erases global boundaries. As for software, it's the world, as venture capitalist Marco Andreessen puts it. A question you should ask as the range of your competition expands is how do I stand out? I am smart is increasingly a best answer to that question because there are a lot of smart people in the world. Almost 600 people are at the SATs each year. Another 7,000 comes within a handful of points. In a winner-take-all the globalized world, these kinds of people are increasingly your direct competitors. Intelligence is not a reliable advantage in a world that's become as connected as ours has. But flexibility is. In a world where intelligence is hyper competitive and many previous technical skills have become automated competitive advantages tilt toward nuance and soft skills like communications, empathy, and perhaps most of all flexibility. If you have flexibility, you can wait for good opportunities both in your career and for your investments. You will have a better chance of being able to learn a new skill when it's necessary. You will feel less urgency to chess competitors who can do things you can't and have more leeway to find your passion and your niche at your own pace. You can find a new routine, a slower pace, and think about life with a different set of assumptions. The ability to do those things when most others can't is one of the few things that will set you apart in the world where intelligence is no longer a sustainable advantage. Having more control over your time and options is becoming one of the most valuable currencies in the world. That's why more people can and more people should save money. You know what else they should do? Stop trying to be so rational. Let me tell you why. Today's next chapter is 11. Is reasonable rational? This quota is aiming to be mostly reasonable works, better than trying to be coldly rational. You are not a spreadsheet. You are a person, a screwed up, emotional person. It took me a while to figure this out, but once it clicked, I realized it's one of the most important parts of finance. With it comes something then that often goes overlooked. Do not aim to be coldly. Rationally, when making financial decision, aim to just be pretty reasonable. Reasonable is more realistic, and you have a better chance of sticking with it for the long run, which is what matters most when managing money. To show you what I mean, let me tell you the story of a guy who tried to cure syphilis with malaria. Julius Wenger George was a 19th century psychiatrist with two unique skills. He was good at recognizing patterns and what others saw as crazy he found merely bold. His specialty was patient with serves neurosyphilis, then a fatal diagnosis with no known treatment. He began noticing a pattern. Syphilis patients tend to recover if they had the added misfortune of having prolonged fevers from an unrelated ailment. Wenger George assumed this was due to a hunch that had been around for centuries, but doctors didn't understand where. Fevers play a role in helping the body fight infection. So he jumped to the logical conclusion. In the early 1900s, Wenger George began injecting patients with low-end strains of typhoid, malaria, and smallpox of triggered fevers, strong enough to kill off their syphilis. This was a dangerous as it sounds. Some of his patients died from the treatment. He eventually settled on a weak version of malaria since it could be effectively countered with quinine after a few days of bone rattle fevers. After some tragic trial and under his experiment work, Wenger George reported that 16 syphilis patients treated with. After some tragic trial and under his experiment work, Wenger Wagner Georges reported that 6 in 10 syphilis patients treated with malaria therapy recovered compared to around 3 in 10 patients left alone. He won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1977. The organization today notes the main work that concerned Wenger George throughout his working life was the endeavor to cure mental disease by including a fever. Penicillin eventually made malaria therapy for syphilis patients obsolete, thank goodness, but Wenger George is one of the only doctors in history who not only recognized fever's role in fighting infection but also prescribed it as a treatment. Fevers have always been as feared as they are mysterious. Ancient Romans worshipped Fevrius the goddess who protected people from fever. Amulets were left at temples to please her, hoping to stave off the next round of shivers. But Wagner Georges was onto something. Fevers are not accidental nuisance. They do play a role in the body road to recovery. We now have better, more scientific evidence of fever's usefulness in fighting infection. A 1 degree increase in body temperature has been shown to slow the replication rate of some viruses by a factor of 200. Numerous investigators have identified a better outcomes among patients who displayed fever. One NIH paper writes, the Seattle Children's Hospital includes a section on its website to educate parents who may panic at the slightest rise in the child's temperature. Fevers turn on the body's immune system. They help the body fight infection. Normal fevers between 100 Celsius and 104 Celsius are good for sick children. But that's where the science ends and reality takes over. Fever is almost universally seen as a bad thing. They are treated they are treated with drugs like Tylenol to reduce them as quickly as they appear, despite millions of years of evolution as a defense mechanism. No parents, no patient, few doctors, and certainly no drug company views fever as anything but a misfortune that should be eliminated. These views do not match the known science. One study was blunt. Treatment of fever is common in the ICU setting, the likely related to standard dogma rather than evidence-based practices. Howard Markel, director of the Center for the History of Medicine, once said of fever phobia. These are cultural practices that spread just as widely as the infectious diseases that are behind them. Why does this happen? If fever are beneficial, why do we fight them so universally? I don't think it's complicated. Fevers hurt, and people don't want to hurt. That's it. A doctor's goal is not just to cure disease, it's to cure disease within the confines of what's reasonable and tolerable to the patients. Fevers can have marginally benefits in fighting infections, but they hurt, and I go to the doctor to stop hurting. I don't care about double-blind studies when I am shriving under a blanket. If you have a pill that can make a fever stop, give it to me now. It may be rational to want to fever if you have an infection, but it's not reasonable. That philosophy, aiming to be reasonable instead of rational, is one or more people should consider when making decisions with their money. Academic finance is devoted to finding the mathematically optimal investment strategies. My own theory is that in the real world, people do not want the mathematically optimal strategy. They want the strategy that maximizes for how well they sleep at night. Harry Marcuse won the Nobel Prize for exploring the mathematical trade-off between risk and return. He was once asked how he invested his own money and described his portfolio allocation in the 1950s when his models were first developed. I visualize my grief if the stock market went way up in my and I wasn't in it, or if it went way down and I was completely in it. My intentions was to minimize my future regret. So I split my contribution 50 by 50 between bonds and equities. Marco is eventually change his investment strategy, diversifying the mix. But two things here are important. One is that minimizing future regret is hard to rationalize on paper but easy to justify in real life. A rational investor makes decisions based on numeric facts. A reasonable investor makes them in a conference room surrounded by co-workers you want to think highly of you, with a spouses you don't want to let down or judge against the silly but realistic competitors that are your brother-in-law, your neighbors, and your own personal doubts. Investing has a social component that's often ignored when viewed through a strictly financial lens. The second is that this is fine. Jason Jwing, who conducted the interview when Marcozzi described how he invested, later reflected. My own view is that people are neither rational or irrational. We are human. We don't like to think harder than we need to, and we have unceasing demands on our attention. Seen in that light, there's nothing surprising about the facts that the pioneer of modern portfolio theory built his initial portfolio with so little regard for his own research, nor is it surprising that he adjusted it later. Markowitz is neither rational or irrational. He is reasonable. What's often overlooked is in finance is that something can be technically true but contextually nonsense. In 2008, a pair of researchers from Yale published a study arguing young savers should support charge their retirement accounts using 2 to 1 margin when buying stocks. It suggests investors taper that leverages as they age, which lets the saver take more risk when they're young and can handle a magnified market roller coaster and less when they're older. Even if using leverage is left, you wipe it out when you were young. If you used to one margin of 50% market drop leaves you with nothing, the researchers showed savers would still be better off in the long run so long as they pick themselves back up, followed the plan, and kept saving in a 2 to 1 leverages account the day after being wiped out. The math works on paper. It's rational strategy, but it's almost absurdly unreasonable. No normal person could watch 100% of their retirement account evaporate and be so fast that they carry on with the strategy undeterred. They did quite look for a different option and perhaps sue their financial advice. The researcher argued that when using the strategy, the expected retirement wealth is 90% higher compared to life cycle funds. It is also 100% less reasonable. There is in fact a rational reason to favor what look like irrational decisions. Here's one. Let me suggest that you love your investment. This is not traditional advice. It's almost badge of honor for investors to claim there's emotion less about their investments because it seems rational. But If lacking emotions about your strategy or the stocks you want increases the odds you will walk away from them when they become difficult. What look like rational thinking becomes a liability. The reasonable investors who love their technically imperfect strategies have an edge because they are more likely to stick with those strategies. There are few financial variables more correlated to performance than commitments to a strategy during its lean years. Both the amount of performance and the odds of capturing it over a given period of time. The historical odds of making money in US markets are 50 by 50 over 1 day periods, 68% in 1 year periods, 88% in 10 years period, and 100% in 20-year periods. Anything that keeps you in the games has a quantifiable advantages. If you view do what you love as a guide to a happier life, it sounds like empty fortune cookie advice. If you view it is yes, the thing providing the endures is necessary to put the quantifiable odds of success in your favor, you realize it should be the most important part of any financial strategy. Invest in a promising company you don't care about, and you might enjoy it when everything's going well. But when the ride inevitably turns, you are suddenly losing money on something you are not interested in. It's double burden, and the path of least resistance is to move on to something else. If you are passionate about the company to begin with, you love the mission, the product, the team, the science, whatever. The inevitable down times when you are losing money or the company needs help are blunted by the fact that at least you feel like you are part of something meaningful. That can be the necessary motivation. Day trading and picking individual stocks is not rational for most investors. The odds are heavily against your success, but there's, there are they are both reasonable in small amounts if they scratches and it is hard enough to leave the rest of your more diversified investments alone. Investor Josh Brown, who advocates and mostly owns diversified funds, once explained why he also owns a smattering ring of individual stocks. I am not buying individual stocks because I think I am going to generate alpha. I just love stocks and I have ever since I was 20 years old, and it's my money. I get to do whatever. Quite reasonable. Most forecasts about where the economy and the stock market are heading next are terrible, but making forecast is reasonable. It's hard to wake up in the morning telling yourself you have no clue what the fortune holds, even if it's true. Acting on investment forecast is dangerous, but I get why people try to predict what will happen next year. It's human nature. It's reasonable. Jack Bogle, the late founder of Vanguard, spent his career on a crusade to promote low-cost passive index investing. Many thought it interesting that his son found a career as an active high-free hedge fund and mutual fund manager. Bogle, the man who said high fee funds violate the humble rules of arithmetic, invested some of his own money in his son's funds. What's the explanation? We do some things for family reasons, Bogle told the Wall Street Journal. If it's not consistent, well, life isn't always consistent. Indeed, it's really easy. Thank you.